All right.
Change the light
Welcome,
here.
welcome, welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for session 2 of Youth Advocacy Training for Ocean and Climate Action for social media and communications. Wherever in the world you may be, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I'm really excited for the conversation today. And as we are waiting for folks to join us, go ahead and introduce yourselves in the chat. Let us know your name, how old you are, where you're from, and our icebreaker question today is if you could have one superpower inspired by the ocean, what would it be? And how would you use that superpower to help the planet? So I'll give us a second so you guys can start the introduction and then we'll jump right into the discussion. We have Kellen, 14 from Connecticut, breathing underwater to work with marine life up close. That's awesome. 15 from Illinois, telepathy so they could clean up all the trash. That's another really good one. Okay. Feel free to continue to use the chat as we go through the discussion. I see we have from Arkansas, the Philippines. That's awesome. Water purification. That's a great idea. I love this. Yeah, I think you guys have some good ideas. I hope that one day all of that could be possible, at least in our dreams. But so today, as you guys are familiar, if you've been with us on this program before, we're going to have our panel discussion. I'm going to introduce our wonderful speaker, and then we'll have our panel discussion with some time for Q&A at the end. So at any point as we're going through the discussion, if you have questions, feel free to share them in the chat or use the Zoom Q&A feature, and we'll hope to get to as many questions at the end as possible. But as we are moving forward, today's speaker is Anelise Reis. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. I hope I got it right. She is a really, really talented communication specialist. She's worked across many different agencies and companies across multiple different continents. So she has a lot of knowledge and expertise that I'm really excited to have her share with us today. So welcome, Anelise. Really wonderful to meet you, to have you on, and I'm excited for the discussion. I
Not
will,
more than me.
yeah, I'll pass it off to you to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. I think so powerful having people really interesting in helping the world. I know you already imagined this, but we have so many room for improvement, and I think the more people we have trying to help, trying to do something, the better. So it's amazing seeing how young you are. This gives me a lot of hope for the future, for the present and the future. And I can share later after this meeting, I can share also my contacts with you, and you can reach me out, and then we can discuss more about this. But just, I think that's it. About the career, that's it. And yeah, because I'm excited. So
Jump right
and,
in. Let's do it. All
yeah,
right.
and also, just reinforcing what Laura said is please feel free to ask anything. There's no stupid questions. There is a lot of complex things going on, so please feel free. Okay.
Awesome. All right, let's dive right in. So, first session that we talked about was the ocean climate connection, and there's a lot to be said about how we are educating our audiences on that connection and all of the things that fall under that umbrella. It can be really complicated, it can be really overwhelming if you don't have a ton of background experience. So when we're talking about messaging on social media and across different communication platforms, there is like a certain right way to go about getting that message across. So, for this first question here, Annalise, with your experience in branding and communication strategy, how would you define effective communication specifically within the context of conservation campaigns?
Sure, I think I will say something that for you guys can look really obvious, but I will tell you it's not. Because effective communication means reaching the right person with the right message at the right time. Because sometimes we know what we want to say, but people cannot understand. And when we talk about conservation, for example, sometimes we need to use some tactical words, we need to use some things that are not so catchy, not so interesting. So it's really important trying to develop a clear message, knowing for whom you are sharing this message and in which channel is the best way to reach this person. And what is really interesting and powerful for conservation, not only ocean conservation, is communication has the power to inform, engage, and inspire action. So what I mean is, it's not just about raising awareness and sharing information with people. It's about creating a connection strong enough to drive behavior change. So this is so important, like quite important, because it's interesting to think people don't know what is happening unless someone is explaining for them, and people don't know what you do unless you are explaining and showing to them. So it's really really important.
Yeah, it is.
and
Go
and
ahead.
no, just because I was thinking a little deeper, also I think it's is important to share, first the message should be clear, because again when we have a complex subject, sometimes people think, okay, how can I sum up this? How is the short line of all this message? Because there's so many things related. So it's really important to spend some time trying to develop this clear message. The second thing is trying to be a little bit emotional. And when I say emotional, it's not about making people crying. It's about trying to touch their hearts in some way, their minds. Because if, like, this is for communication in general, okay, it's much more easy to reach someone's attention if you touch their heart, if you share something that might put them to think. Um, so this is also interesting. Sometimes you can try to develop something that can be not tricky, but interesting. Like, I didn't know about this. I never stopped to think about this. So this is really important. And also, the last thing is our message needs to, as I say, inspire action. So the more you can have like a call to action, like a suggestion, something for people to do it. Um, and while I'm saying all of this, you can think like, honey, you say I need to be clear. How can I add so many layers of emotions, of actions? How can I do this? Something that we do a lot in advertising and helps for all types of communication is if you establish what is your primary message, the first one. Like, if I just have 5 seconds of someone, what this person needs to understand. Then we have the second layer of message in which you can explain a little bit more. You know, for example, a clear message: we need your help to save the world. Random example, okay? Why? The second layer is almost why I need, because we have many plastic pollutions and etc etc etc, and then we need to have people on the third layer. So, for example, we need to have people helping sign petitions, increasing the awareness about the problem. So you can have a lot of layers of message, and you share all these layers according to the channel and the time that you have to share. So, giving you an example just to try to help me to explain for you, imagine if you are in social media, you have the first message, a text. Then on the next 5 seconds or in the next slide of the carousel, for example, you start to explain a little bit more. And then at the end, you call the people's attention to do something. And that's it. Because if you allow me, I can stay here for 1 hour.
No, I think that's a really great way to kind of lead us into this conversation because effective communication means a lot of things. There's a lot of different approaches that you can take. And like you said, different demographics of people sometimes respond better to different things, and different platforms are sometimes better for, getting specific messages across. And that's something that we'll cover in a little bit. But I think you
Mhm.
also kind of already covered this, but I do want to kind of bring us to the second question here is what the key functions are that communication serves in driving that action. You mentioned a little bit about, there's one thing about educating people, but then there's, you know, once they're like hooked and once you have their attention, getting them to actually take action can be kind of complicated as well. So, what
Yeah.
role does the, broad umbrella of communication actually play in getting people to take action?
Yes, for sure. Because communication first can share this information in a awareness way. So, like one sentence, as I told you, um, and then you also have this moment in which you need to explain a little bit more. And as you said, depending on the platform, depending on your demographics, you might need to change the message, the way of explaining. Uh, because if no, people may not understand or may not be interested in what are you saying. So again, giving examples to try to help you guys to understand what I'm saying is, even if, for example, you want to talk with other corporations, with NGOs, you need to have someone helping you. The best place today to start to build this connection and this, how can I say, like, two ways, like help, like try to bring maybe companies that can sponsor you, the work you do. You need to go on LinkedIn, or you need to have a session in your website in which you explain more things using more technical information, accurate information, because something that probably we'll talk about this many many times, is people don't need, and even the more professional people, they don't need more um, companies screaming problems, like giving no dramatic information, like be- they need to understand, because if no, just seems like you are another organization or another person just screaming problems. Like, you need to show what we're talking about.
Very much
You have,
so.
and guys, even if you have like 10 years old or 100 years old, or if you are young, a small or a huge organization, you need you need to have good information in your hands to share. This is key. This is like a gold nowadays, with so much lies spreading across the planet.
Yeah, I think that's a really excellent point. Keeping a couple of key facts in your back pocket. So, over half of the oxygen that we breathe comes from the ocean. That's a great hook line to get somebody interested.
Great.
We care, you know, having those little really easy, digestible little quick facts, I find to be super helpful in this. But I loved your point about, we don't need any more people screaming about, all of the problems. Yes, we want to stay up to date. Yes, we want to share, when new science is coming out and we hear about, there's wildfires in Los Angeles or in Pakistan, or, there's flooding in Brazil or, wherever else. You want to be kept up to date, but you also want to focus on the solutions a little bit as well. And we'll talk a little bit about that coming up. But moving to this next section here, you already had mentioned, different audiences do respond to different types of messaging. So as a young person trying to identify their target audience, whether they are just trying to, start a new Instagram account for educational purposes for their friends and family and, whoever else, or, they're trying specifically to promote an event or a campaign. When you go about doing that, the first step is to kind of figure out who you're trying to reach. So, how, as a young person, can we kind of figure out what that looks like for us? Like, how do we define that and like look for them and find those members of our audience?
Yes, sure. I think something really important to consider is, since you are starting, so, or since you are like experiencing and talking about this for not much time, it's really important for you to be open to test and learn. Because even if you imagine how can your target be, you know, uh, maybe will be a different target while you start to evolve on these conversations. So something that really helped me and helped brands to learn how is the best way to approach who my target is, these things, is start to develop. And if you can have like a document, something with you, like I will start with, I don't know, approach a more emotional approach. Let me see what I have, how people react. And once you start to increase your followers on your own Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, not Twitter anymore, sorry guys, X, uh, LinkedIn, TikTok, these platforms already have many tools that can help you to understand who your target is. So, for example, is more male, female, which countries they are, how old are them, and then considering this, you can, okay, they are older than I thought, for example. So let me try maybe be a bit more serious, not so funny. Let's see if this works more or no. So be open, really open to notice people want, how can I say, like people want things different than you imagine. So be open to test and again learn, because sometimes you really want to stay in a way, and then you try, and at the end your target's not, it's not catching, it's not getting involved. So you start to get frustrated, because like I am saying something so important, why nobody's paying attention? So should I start this time with something funny? Should I start with a curiosity? Should I, try to play a little bit? And when you are small, in terms of followers, you also have more room to commit mistakes, to make mistakes, like I think I was too much. No, 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 no. So let's delete and try again. You know, yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, I think that's those are great points. And I think your concept of like, honestly, we just have to try whatever works, throw everything you can at the wall and see what sticks. I think, like you said, when you are still starting off small, you don't have a ton of followers, that is a great time to do that. And we'll also talk about this in a little bit as well, about navigating the difficulties that come with being on social media. It is important for us, especially as young people. I know that, we kind of grew up with social media from a very young age, and we all kind of know this kind of intrinsically, but I think it's important to acknowledge that the algorithm changes so quickly. We're never going to be able to know exactly what it wants us to feed it at exactly the right time. And, if you have a post that you're hoping goes like really big and reaches a lot of people, and sometimes that might not happen, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing anything wrong. It just means that you should maybe try taking a different approach. And that's what I think you were talking about, just, being creative and just trying whatever you can.
And just to add, I think it is also important for everybody understand is, sometimes your target, the person that will engage, is not who you think they would be. So sometimes you are really creating something that would catch your friends, for example, or somewhere similar to you, but then after 2 years, you notice, oh my God, it's like an older audience from Asia. They're super engaged with me, and they are so different than I, but we share the same value, you know. So when we are too oriented in ourselves, the way we think, the way we say, we speak, this can be not good in these terms, you know. You can
Yeah.
really limit it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's a good way to kind of bring us to this next question where there's so many different considerations when we're talking about our differences in our audience members that it can be kind of tricky to actually maintain consistent messaging across all of our platforms. So, while still being able to be relevant and interesting and entertaining to all of these different people, how would you advise a young person to actually make sure that their messaging is staying consistent across all of those different factors?
I'll give a tactical idea because helps everyone in companies and everyone you can imagine. Have like one slide, one file in which you develop all that messages that I spoke before. So the key message, the second message, the third message, and etc. So you have the structure of what you want to say. When you start to think, okay, how can I use this on TikTok? On TikTok, I need to be more dynamic. I need maybe to use like a music on my background. Maybe there is something that is already trending that I can use. Okay, and then you create considering that structure, but you adapt for that place. When you go to LinkedIn, for example, you need to be more professional, more serious. So you can think, okay, there is articles, there are news that also say the same thing, that give me data to explain this to people. That's good. And then you can add more information, develop a longer text explaining, like having almost like a storytelling with the data, something more really not scientific, but more professional, really. So people go, okay, I know what this person means. Now I understand why. And the same thing is if you go to organizations, are you talking about another NGO? They're also related to ocean, so they already know the problems. Or no, I want to talk, for example, Greenpeace. They talk about oceans, but they talk about many, many, many things. So maybe I can approach them sharing information that they might not know, maybe something new. Uh, so again, considering the same structure, you can adapt the message, you can create different things, considering these targets that are different. So at the end, you know, your foundation is the same. It's the same.
Yeah.
You just create some differences to be more, to respect more the platform behavior.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think, I have ADHD, so I have, difficulty like remembering exactly what I posted where and when. And sometimes it can be kind of hard to remember, like, am I being true to my original messaging? So I think having that structure is going to be really, really helpful for our audience here. Now we've talked also a lot about connecting emotions with our audience as well. So there is definitely a bit of a storytelling component when we're talking about communications, especially on social media. We expect like I don't know, for example, on YouTube, when people make vlogs, they're, talking to the person behind the camera like they're your best friend. Like, hey guys, what's up? How are you? Like, today, follow me. We're going to go do this thing. And that is a form of storytelling. And I use the YouTube example because it's a pretty straightforward, like, you can see how that's a story. But with other social media platforms, it can be kind of tricky to figure out what that means. So, can you just share with us a little bit about like how storytelling can impact your conservation method messaging and actually, strengthen your campaign overall?
Yes, sure. I think storytelling, again, not only for ocean conservation or NGOs, like for companies for life. You need to have a way to make people pay attention and care for what you are saying. So in our case, we need to care, like almost developing an emotion, because we need to have movement, action with this. right? So again, as we don't know who your target is, how old are they, where they are, again, start to develop and test. So for example, I'm gonna start with a impactful fact. Like 45% of the plastic pollution in the ocean are caused by fishing, for example. Let's start with this. And then second, again, you explain more. This is due to blah, 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 blah. Okay, now let me create, and then again, call to action. So you give the fact, you explain more, call to action. Sign the petition, share this information so more people can understand, and etc. But again, you can think in a different way. Like, do you know fishing is one of the main causes for plastic pollution? Something more, almost opening a dialogue. Okay. Or you can also get a picture of a fish or of a seal, all like with a lot of plastic surrounding them. So something more dramatic. And you can just start with this, like, you can change this animal's life, for example, can be more impactful, more touch the person's hearts, like, wow. And then you give the second layer of information. So summing up is, yes, storytelling is key for all corporations to communicate. This is your way to explain something that is happening, to also help people to understand, because guys, believe it or not, some things might be obvious for you, but it's not for everybody. So it's important for you to explain. And again, try, test what it, in which way I can have more people engaging.
Yeah.
And something important, a tip, I just remember here. I don't know if you already noticed in your lifetime or no, but usually people pay attention when you relate them with the problem or the consequence. So, for example, if you feature real people, show communities, show animals, show like life that depends or suffers, usually this, catches the heart, because the person can see themselves in that situation. So humanizing the issue, this usually is really strong.
Yeah, I really appreciate your take on this. I've added here this little note. This is my best advice that I personally could give to a young person trying to figure out how to, you know, start their first foray into storytelling on social media. I am not by any means an expert on social media. I've been really lucky to be a part of different social media campaigns on the front end, on the back end, and what have you. But I think that this ethos, pathos, logos, those are Latin words. Ethos meaning appeals to credibility, to authority, like you were saying, you know, taking the fish example, like however you want to frame that to appeal to somebody's authority, like you have the ability to change this fish's life, right? That's that kind of framing. Pathos, appealing to emotion. Look at how horrible, look at this fish, it's suffering, don't you want to change this? That's a way to frame it. And then appealing to logic and reason, like you said at the very beginning, did you know, starting a dialogue, did you know that this issue was happening? And did you know that there are ways that we can solve it, that we can take action to fix it? And I think that is a big part of, you know, across all of these different platforms, across all of the different audiences that we might have across these different platforms, that's a good way to figure out where your strengths are and where you can really pinpoint, what makes your messaging the most effective. So I think you kind of did already cover this, what makes narrative compelling and memorable. Do you have anything else to kind of add to that side of things?
No, just I think actually just a tip for everyone, to also help you to know what is going on, to have important information. start to follow, and mainly on LinkedIn, if you have an account there, these organizations that you guys like. You can try to search the people that work on these organizations, who are the scientists behind, because you can start to have access to the information when they are super fresh, you know? So then you can see, you can be another person that is sharing important information that so people need to know. So you have access to the new information. You share this with people, and you have the credibility, of the source. And again, this is important in a field. Internet is the field of many lies, right? Fake news. It's really important to use credible sources and reliable data to support your message. Really.
Very much so. And I think we can talk about the differences between primary sources and secondary sources, get into the almost the journalism side of things a little bit. Um,
Yeah.
to your point, it is a very, let's say, tricky time to be navigating the world of misinformation right now. So, just making sure that you are encouraging your audience to look at things with critical thinking skills as well, and doing what
Yes.
you can to share the correct information. Very,
Totally.
very. Okay. Moving on to this next one. So we've talked about kind of all of the theory, all of the background, like the basic steps to starting a promotional campaign or whatever. Now we're ready. We know who our target audience is. We know what our messaging is. What is the next step? Like, how do we actually get that content creation going? How do we, figure out how often to post, when to post, all of that? So let's dig into some of the more tangible, more practical steps on all of that. What do you recommend where we start?
First, again, might be obvious, but it's not. What is your main goal? And why I say this? Because usually the organizations and the corporations and etc. they have many goals. I want to increase awareness, but also have an engagement and also have sponsors helping me and also driving donations. And no, 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 wait. Nobody can have everything. Unfortunately, that is the truth of life. So even guys, when you have a huge company of like Nike, Adidas, something like this, they have something clear what they want to achieve with that campaign. So for example, if you want to talk about a problem that people already know, so plastic pollution, for example, people know more. Or you can say, since people already know, so it's my goal, increase the engagement, drive people to action. Should I start like a petition, or should I search if there is already a petition that I can be part of, that I can help to share? Or I want to drive donations because I want myself to do something with this problem. So first, what is your goal with this event, campaign, etc.? Second, once you know your goal, the second point is who is our audience? Is normal people on the internet? Is big corporations? Is another NGO? Is, I don't know, a millionaire? You are trying to find a millionaire to sponsor you. Can be. And then once you have the audience that you have, you need to craft a strong message. Again, so we come back to the beginning of this conversation. You need to craft a strong message. Then choose the right channels. Okay, if I want to, I don't know, drive donations and I want to have it as an audience, big corporations, I already have my message here. What is the best place to share this message to these people to do this, to drive donations? Maybe digital is the digital world is already amazing because you can, add your credit card, use your Apple Pay, and it's donated. So let's try with digital. I need to invest less money. I can test and learn. Okay, I can try there. Another thing that is really helpful, guys, that's something that I am learning while I am working with organizations, NGO sustainability, and etc., is build partnerships. Many NGOs, they want to have friends because their goal is to help the planet, humanity. So the more people they know, the more people that believe in them, the better for them. So you can approach a big organization like, hi, WWF, I would like to help you in some way. Like, can we chat? I don't know, do you have something to share with me that I can learn? Where do you have the news, the data from the scientists that I can also share? You can really try to build this. And because, guys, usually NGOs and people that are trying to increase awareness and drive change on the planet, we're not billionaires. So we really need to bring forces, to combine our forces to make something bigger. And believe me, people are open to collaborate.
Absolutely, they
Yeah.
are. Absolutely, they are. And I want to encourage our audience. I know we have some young people in our audience who are still in maybe middle school or high school. And I got to tell you, it is definitely intimidating to go up to organizations like WWF, like you mentioned, like big organizations that have a global reach. And you're just like, oh, they're not going to listen to me. Like, who am I? Like, they, especially when it's coming from a young person, are so willing to, share resources if they can at least point you in the right direction, get you in touch with somebody. They are so more willing to do that than I think a lot of people realize. So I think that's really fantastic advice. And I think also like the practical steps to doing that, requesting on Instagram, doing a collaborative post, so tagging people in your Instagram story, stuff like that. Like it might not seem like that's like that big of a deal, but the worst thing they can do is just not respond. The best thing they can do is be like, "Oh, I saw this because you tagged us in it. This is a really cool thing that you're doing." And you might even get them to reach out to you. So I definitely recommend, doing whatever you can to fortify and strengthen your partnerships, definitely.
And guys, an extra tip again, because I start to remember things. Uh, First, you don't need to just, you can try the big ones, but you can also try the small organizations. They really need help, really, because probably they don't have much money. So they really need more people helping them. And second, who is managing the social media of all the organizations usually is young people.
Very
And
true.
they and
I
they are
can
open,
personally attest to this. Yes, that is very
and
true.
they are open to talk, you know. And for example, I in my personal Instagram, personal life, okay, I have like 2,500 followers. Like, I'm not an influencer, nothing like this. But I record a video talking about a climate problem in Brazil, and then I tag a big Instagram in Brazil, thinking the same. The worst that can happen is they will not accept. And then they accepted, and I was like to my husband, "You not believe they accepted." So you really need to try. You really need to try.
Yeah, it's so worth it. Like I said, young people especially have grown up on the internet, and we know that there are sometimes like unwritten rules about etiquette, how to engage with people, and sometimes it might feel a little weird to, tag an organization that you don't know, but it is so worth it. If you can have the experience like you just said of them actually responding, and then you're like, "Oh my God, like this is so cool. I finally have like all of a sudden this amazing resource at my hands," and they're willing to work together and collaborate, like you wouldn't have had that opportunity otherwise. So it's always, worth a shot, definitely.
Yes.
So now we have talked a lot about the digital media side of things and social media specifically, but that's not the only part of communications that exists in this world, which to young people who have grown up on the internet is kind of a foreign concept at times. So, how can youth advocates effectively use a mix of digital and traditional media to expand their reach?
The ideal word, ideal, is if you could use the traditional media and the digital media to share the message. And why? Because usually the tradition, I'm say, for example, television, I don't know if people still listen to radio. In some countries, radio is still really strong. Or you go to out of home media, like outdoor media and etc. Usually you don't have much time to explain. So these channels, they are most used for awareness message, awareness. And what is really good is they reach many people. It's like crazy, crazy. But they are also expensive. So that's why no, it's not like everybody that can afford this, and even every company. Um, but again, sometimes you can approach like a newspaper, a smaller newspaper, a smaller magazine, a local TV channel. Like, guys, I have been doing this job. Do you have any room that I can share this information? Because something that people usually don't know is this traditional media. They have like in Portuguese, in Brazil, there is a specific word, I don't know which is in English, but they have a material prepare in case a brand didn't share the content in time of go on air. So for example, this happens, okay? So like for example, Adidas is late to deliver the advertising, and then they have that space on the agenda, like, oh my god, what we will use here. So they already have this, like, something prepare to put on these spots. So maybe if you are like in a local media or like in a small broadcaster, you can suggest, can I use this like small small room on the newspaper to talk about something? Maybe, again, worth the shot, you know. And in digital, what is the difference? And this really changed the world. I know for you guys who are young, you may not believe, but the digital, like the room that we have to go deeper to the topic, to reach different countries, different people, it's crazy. So again, traditional media usually is like go to one country or like one city or one province, one region. You talk with million people. It's crazy. They are expensive. But in digital, you can also talk with million people. If you create something that people engage, people share, and etc. And if they are interesting, you can develop more content, explain more about that.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's it's
absolutely.
it's clear. If it's clear.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay.
100%. And I really appreciate you bringing up the point of, local magazines and local newspapers and stuff, especially because right now we're living in a time where there are people who are in charge of social media platforms and news publications who really want to control the narrative themselves about the state of climate change or youth advocacy or what have you. And I think that moving forward, we're going to see a shift towards, or I guess a shift back to some of that more localized traditional media away from just strictly social being a really, really strong hold for advocacy. Because especially when you're like trying to promote, local campaigns and stuff like that, that your target audience is people around you physically, the spaces that, or I guess rather the mediums that reach those people are still there, and they are also definitely struggling and want help and would very much love to collaborate with young people as well. So I think that, as we learn how to navigate the new things that are happening in digital media, I think that traditional media is going to be very important for us to remember how to use effectively.
And I know I am maybe talking too much, but this is something that I just learned. I need to share. I just finished a course in a university in Netherlands, talking about sustainability and etc. And something that I learned that really inspired me is Usually, this again, data, usually when you have local actions, things change faster and better than huge audiences because people, they are connected to that place. That place changed their lives, you know. So if you try, because again, usually we think like we need to talk with everybody worldwide and etc. We need to drive change. Many times you will drive change in your local group, you know, really, guys. And there are many cases that the local actions drive change for like cities because they see that this can, that can really function. So wow, this small neighborhood, they did something that's so nice. So then the city start to apply this, then the province, and then they come. So believe the local actions are super strong and they drive many change.
Absolutely. And I just wrote it in the chat just as a reminder to everybody, the concept of think globally, act locally. It's something that we've talked about a ton of times in the first session of this program cycle. We're talking about it right now. We'll probably continue to talk about it through the next two sessions. It's just it applies to everything. And social media and traditional media, I think it isn't necessarily like the first thing that you think of, because on social media you want as big of a reach as possible, but like you said, the local actions are really how you build the strong foundation to be able to then scale up and reach even more people. Um,
Yes.
Speaking of which, going viral, what are your thoughts on creating viral content? There's a lot of people who seem to believe that that should be the goal, is to go viral with as many posts as you possibly can so you can reach as many people as possible. But should that actually be the goal in conservation campaigns? What are your thoughts?
I think not the goal, because just to um, try to be clear, going viral is really interesting because you bring attention to something. So many people start, wow, I didn't know, for example. Wow, that's so nice, I didn't know. So a few years ago, there was a picture of a straw in a turtle on the ocean. This picture was in all newspapers, really, in all the world, was crazy. And this picture drove attention to the plastic problem in the ocean. So yes, this is important. The viral content has his own place. But I think what is the problem with this is people think sometimes just going viral is enough, and it's not. Because again, we need to drive change. So if you can have something viral, nice, but you need to bring more layers, more things, more content, more information, and continue talking to people to really drive change. So for example, with this picture of the turtle, people start to become concerned. You know, some cities, they banned the plastic straw and many other things and etc. So amazing. And let's just remember, it's not only this picture, there was a lot of movement going on, but many people never signed a petition trying to reduce the plastic pollution. Maybe they don't know there's petitions they can be part of, you know. For example, there is a plastic treat that has been developed in the last 5 years by all the countries that are part of the COP, so the climate conference of I forgot in English. In Portuguese is ONU.
Conference of
Okay,
Parties.
thank you. uh, and this treat, will all the countries, they are trying to, okay, so what are the rules for everybody? Everybody needs to do the same thing. We need to give our hands and change this problem. There were a lot of petitions going on, WWF, Greenpeace, and etc., trying to put pressure on this street, because there has, like, as I said, 5 years of conversations and they never have the street signed. So they start to put pressure. So again, you need to inform people. You need to call them to action. You need to have more time talking to them, sharing information. Just the viral straw picture, nobody signed a petition because of this. They didn't know there were petitions.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That is
So
a
they have different roles on the communication, like.
100%. I think that is, I probably couldn't come up with a better example to talk about this. So I know the girl who, well, the PhD researcher who filmed that video with the turtle with the straw in its nose. I just added her Instagram handle in the chat here. It's at Sea Turtle Biologist. She is a German researcher named Dr. Christine Finniger, and she works in, I believe, Costa Rica. And if you go to her account, you'll see, I mean, that video went beyond viral. I mean, it was like everywhere for like a long time too. Like viral, crazy, crazy viral. But Christine has less than 50,000 followers on Instagram. Now, that's not none. Like, that's a good amount. Like, she has a good reach. But you can see that just because an image alone that might, like we were talking about the narrative before, there's not a call to action attached to it, but it did, wake a lot of people up to the issues that were happening. It appealed to emotion. It appealed to, oh my God, what's happening? Like, can I find out more about this? It led to more people asking those kinds of questions. But like you said, there wasn't necessarily a huge effort amongst people who saw that video actually take action. So, there are some pluses to going viral. There are, not necessarily negatives. There are definitely negatives, but in the context of, conservation messaging, not a ton of negatives. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the goal. I would also say, because going viral is a goal for so many people, and, you know, again, young people growing up on the internet, you kind of assume that that's what you want to do. If you are working on a campaign or an event and you have something that doesn't go viral, you might not feel great. Like, you might be like, why didn't this like actually reach as many people as I wanted it to, like whatever. But if you're, working on a local campaign, does it really have to go viral? Not necessarily. So it's the kind of thing leading us into this next question, like, what are some of the metrics that we can use to kind of assess our campaign beyond just the number of people that it reached, such as like the number of people who saw the post and signed a petition or signed up for a newsletter or what have you?
Yes, because guys, numbers is not the answer for everything. And if you get back to the goal of your campaign, so when you talk about here, like how can I measure the success of my campaign? Depend, what is your goal? Do you want to have like $100,000 to help an organization that helps the ocean? Yes, yeah. Did you reach this? Amazing. No. Do you want to increase your followers because you want to have a broader audience? Okay, so then go to numbers. Or no, you want to have people more like engaging with your content, sharing this. So sometimes you don't gain like one extra follower, but all your followers are like 50% of our followers share your post. This is amazing. This is amazing because quality, guys, this is for life. Quality is not related to numbers. Again, you have billions of people knowing about the plastic pollution and just a few really trying to do something.
Yeah.
Because people can see the picture, for example, the turtle picture. Wow, that's so sad. Yeah, and what the person will do with this,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know?
100%. 100%. Um, so we do have one more slide left. I think that we can kind of discuss this as a part of the Q&A because I have a feeling we might get some questions about that, but we are coming close to the top of the hour, so I do want to make sure that we have time to answer some questions from our audience. I did
Sure.
see couple of people had their hand raised at a couple of points throughout the session. So if you do have questions, feel free to share them in the Q&A. And as we, give people time to share their questions and stuff, I do want to just ask, like, who are some of the people online that you personally look to for inspiration as far as conservation messaging is concerned? Like, do you have any specific accounts or like individuals online who you think do a really good job?
Yes, and I can share later with you guys. I can do a list and explaining why I follow all of them. Because we have like organizations really, they use strong data to talk about the things, and we also have another other organizations that have a good like emotional level of involving people. So I think it's really hard to find one that has everything. So you can use different inspiration, like people, organizations, and etc., and from different areas of the planet as well, and try to create our own way.
Absolutely. I'll shout out Future Earth on Instagram. I think graphic design is really cool. They have really awesome visuals. They have really simple things that make it easier for people to share that also have a call to action attached to them. They share a lot of resources. I'll share their handle here in the chat. There we go. And then, yeah, as we're again, anybody who has questions, you're welcome to share. But I also want to touch on this one, which is what strategies can young advocates use to handle any potential negativity? We already talked a little bit about misinformation or other backlash that can potentially happen when promoting conservation messages online. Like, what is your best advice to a young person who might be dealing with some of that?
Okay, trying to be fast because I know I speak too much. Is first, guys, internet is where people share everything they think. They don't care who is who is reading. They don't care. They just share their problems, their ways of interpretate the world. So don't take too personal. First, don't consider this is personal because it's not. People need to go to therapy, believe me. First. Second, pick your battles because some comments they deserve attention because you can build a constructive dialogue, you know. And some comments it's just like people being toxic, so just ignore. Other thing, the platforms they already have ways to block some words and things like that, so you don't need to spend your time reading things that are useless. You don't need. Second, engage respectfully. Show you are speaking serious because you are calm, you have facts, you are a solution oriented person. Like you are not here to fight. I'm here sharing information that are true. If you disagree, okay, that's not my problem. I'm doing my part. I'm okay. Okay. And again, for me, the strongest thing for you is stay factual, combat misinformation with good resources and data. Really, if you have a good data, just okay, like this already answered the question. Like
Yeah.
this, don't need to spend time.
100%. I think that's really great advice. I think, Abigail in the chat just added, if they don't agree or are unwilling to listen, then they aren't the ones that you are trying to reach anyway. I think that's really, really good point.
Totally, totally.
Like you said, like, well, when we are, our goal in our messaging is to do education, there are going to be people who just refuse to believe or
Refuse.
entertain or whatever. And those are not ever going to be the people that you want to give your energy to anyway, because it's wasted energy. You have more people who are curious and actually interested about the things that you say, so give them your energy instead.
Yeah. And guys, there are a lot of people that are interesting. They are cute to learn, to help, but they don't know why. So you can reach a person that is already people that are already interested. So share information, showing ways to help. So the person that deny climate change, for example, this is not our problem. This is an education problem. It's a deep, deep problem. It's not your problem to solve. You know, try to embrace people that already have good intentions, showing them the way. Try to help them to help the planet, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's a really wonderful kind of note to end on here. We also have Star in the chat adding their commentary. If you feel upset about something toxic commented, every comment, hateful or not, will boost your post and allow more people to see it. Their hate in the end will help people learn more and be impacted. I think that's another great way to end, you know, any sort of attention you get on social, positive or negative, how you respond to it is up to you. But if we're talking about analytics specifically, it's all good. So, you know,
Exactly.
take that
Exactly.
and run with it, I think is a good way to kind of wrap up this discussion. I do want to just go over the program schedule before I let you all go. We'll see you again here next Saturday at the same time for event planning and fundraising. And then the Saturday after next, again at the same time for campaign organizing. And then session 5 is designed specifically for youth associated with a zoo, aquarium, or museum. You could be a volunteer, you could be a teen intern. All of these institutions have different programs that bring youth in. And if you're a part of one of those programs, we want to talk to you. It's going to be all about applying the skills that we've talked about today, social media and communications, plus the skills developed in session 3 and 4 and how to apply them within those institutions specifically. There is a separate registration link. And if you need that, you can go to worldoceanday.org and find it there. But yeah, all of the recordings for all of the sessions are going to be available on the World Ocean Day YouTube channel. We will have a feedback survey for all of you once we hit session 4, which will be sent out via email. And then, of course, in the meantime, if any of you do have any questions, please feel free to shoot me an email. Anelise, it was wonderful to talk to you today. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise. I had a great time, and really appreciate you being on with us today.
Thank you so much, guys. And really, we need you. We need you, young people. You have energy, you have passion. Sometimes you have time to do things, you know what is trending, so really believe in your strength. There are many good examples of young people trying to help the world. Greta is one of these people, like she went to such important international meetings. So believe in our power. Your intention is important for the world. Each one is so important, like, so believe me, the planet needs you, like everybody needs everybody. And thank you so much for being here, for listening to me. If you have any questions for me, Laura will share with me later. It will be a pleasure for me to answer. And I will also share this key information for you to have if you want to have your notes, and my LinkedIn, my email, so we can also talk on the future. Thank you so
Yeah.
much, Laura. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, Annalise, you too as well. I hope all of you have a great rest of your weekend. Be kind to one another, lean on each other when you need it, and just know that World Ocean Day and the Ocean Project, we're here to support any work that any young person is doing around the world to support the ocean and climate health. So if you ever have anything that you want us to share, feel free to send us a DM and we're happy to share it on our platforms as well. So yeah, all of that to say, thank you guys so much. I hope to see you again next week and have a great rest of your weekend, everyone.
Bye bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye.